Conrad.
Well, hello there, Melinda. Has something changed?
No, what are you talking about?
It looks slightly different, I think.
No. Well,
No.
maybe a little
Okay.
bit. Maybe a little bit.
Okay. Well, I think you look fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking about making a joke that I had washed my hair with the wrong bottle of product and just accidentally bleached my hair, but no. I wanted to go in a different direction. So,
Yeah.
here we go.
Well, it looks amazing.
Thank
And
you.
it
I feel like I
works
look like
really well.
I can be your sister now because we have the same general hair color now.
Yeah, but yours is reacting with the lights really well. It's very impressive.
Oh, well, I just have lights. I don't know. Yours does too. Like I
Yeah.
feel like
Well,
they
I've
look.
got a little halo going on.
Oh, well, that's because you're so angelic, Conrad.
Not in this episode.
No, neither one of us is going to be, and I have a feeling that folks are going to be mad at both of us, and that's fine. I think it's going to
all
be
good.
it's going to be a fun episode, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Welcome to Dreamland. Our topic, obviously, today, this month, is hot takes. Although we'll talk about whether these are actually hot takes in a little while, but we did, we stopped doing our standard thing where we like send an image out to everyone and sort of get them to guess what we're going to be talking about. But our supporters on Tara really loved that process, so we kind of did an abbreviated version of that this month, and we put it in our Patreon, and it was this image here. Which, is fun. It doesn't have any clues in it, but it's just sort of like, we asked everyone in Patreon, like, hey, what is a movie that you went to see and everybody around you is like loving it and you're like, for real? Like, and you just totally didn't get it. Because I feel like everyone has had this experience, and it's so Jason Anderson came out and really took a brave stand and said that his movie like this is Top Gun, which people do get pretty passionate about the Top Gun. I feel the same way about it, honestly. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you get deported if you dislike Top Gun in the US. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah.
They haven't deported me yet. I mean, I'll just
Okay.
I'll keep testing that. But and then Wicked Person says that for him it's Big Trouble in Little China. Another one that I also agree. I agree on that one too.
Wow.
Conan the Librarian, our KBA, says his is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He says the lead character is very smarmy. Which
Yes, yeah. I completely agree with that. That is
really?
Only one of the John Hughes movies that I cannot bear. I mean, I obviously know that some of the other ones are horrifically rapey, but aside from that, Ferris Bueller just rubs me up the wrong way. I just want to punch him in the face.
I get that. Wildstar Studio called out The Beastmaster, which I loved as a kid. I cannot watch it anymore, probably for very different reasons. But yeah, I can see, like, it's a very like low budget movie for sure. Do you like that movie, Conrad?
I liked it as a kid. I've not revisited it as an adult. We might do it on Movie Oubliette at some point, I think.
Oh, that might be a good call. Yeah. Philip Story actually said Die Hard, which I bet he gets a lot of hate for that one. But
wow. I mean, the hottest take on that was whether or not it's a Christmas movie, not whether you like it at all. That was just a given. So,
well, kudos
brave
to Philip for taking that one. And then Zantara herself came in, and she had a very, very long list, which I just wanted to give her a round of applause, everyone, because it was amazing. She listed some bangers. Get ready. She said The Shining, Temple of Doom, Batman 89, and The Big Lebowski. Like, any one of those could get you kicked out of a meetup group, like, instantly for saying it. And I think it's amazing that she had the balls to say that. So well done, Zantara.
Yes, I just love Xantara for that. She does the same on Movie Oubliette. Her final verdict on Watcher in the Woods was just a delight to read, and I really enjoyed it.
I know. She is the patron of the month this month. And speaking of Zantara, I normally don't read super chats till the end, everyone, but she gave us a couple of really very, very kind super chats right at the top of the show, even before we started, I think. And I want to share those now. So she says, I get why E.T. would rub you wrong. For me, it was the first movie I saw in a theater and the only one my mom took me to. She took me and one of her friends. I thought it was such a special treat for decades until my sister said mom had previously taken her to see it and that I was only an excuse for mom to see it again with her friend. Now, with mom showing signs of dementia and her friend on hospice, it's just nostalgia and I will never see it again.
Wow. Gosh, that's
Yeah,
a heavily loaded film.
it is. I mean, it is a heavy film. We somehow managed to laugh through it. But but I hear what you're saying, Zantar. I definitely do. And thank you for sharing that memory. So
Yeah.
So yeah, hot takes as a concept obviously are typically they're shared, especially on social media, like just to be edgy or contrary, and to throw the commenter into the center of a discussion that is not actually about them. So a lot of times it feels like clickbait or rage bait. So that is not the kind of hot take that this is. This is more focusing on the phenomenon of being the odd man out with a piece of media. And I think, like I said at the top of the show, a lot of people have had this experience. So our goal today, just to set the parameters of the discussion, our goal is not to convince you to love or hate either one of these films, but it's good to be able to hear criticism and not immediately get defensive. So just let the hate wash over you. No,
Mm.
just open yourself up to seeing things through someone else's eyes just for a few minutes, and then you can go right back to feeling exactly the way you feel. I think it's an interesting exercise, as we will show, because for each of the films we picked, I picked mine, you picked yours, Conrad, and they are movies that, like, I don't hate E.T., and you don't hate, obviously, looking behind you, and I'll make us bigger so people can see. You clearly don't hate The Princess Bride.
No.
So at any given moment, whatever movie we're talking about, one of the people on the screen is going to be agreeing with your point of view. So just remember that as we're kind of going through this. So I read this interesting journal article just really quickly that was called "What Makes Things Funny," and it was really like going into like what literally makes things feel funny to people. And there were just a couple of points I wanted to read. Quote, Flamson and Barnett from 2008 contend that humor evolved to help people identify partners who share their knowledge, values, and worldview. Learning that someone shares your sense of humor reveals that they also share your values and beliefs, and observing someone laugh with you makes you feel more similar to them. So I think that's true.
Mm.
And then another quote, or not another quote, but just taking that and going with it, I think that the opposite is also true. So when someone doesn't share your sense of humor, they likely don't share your values and beliefs. And if they are not similar to you, then instinctually they are other and they are not to be trusted. So I think that
Yes.
whether you're talking about foods you like, movies you like, anything you like, if somebody goes, ugh, I don't like that, then you're just like, well, you suck. Like, that's just a natural reaction that we all have, myself
Yes.
included. I'm not saying I'm superior, but I try to stop that and go, tell me why you don't like that, and just listen to the information. So,
Yeah. Because you can learn something, and we don't have to be so binary and tribal. We can actually
yes.
just learn things from each other. I saw the movie through your eyes when we watched The Princess Bride, and you saw E.T. through my eyes,
I
frequently
did.
rolling.
That's
Um,
right.
yes. And we learned something, and we got to see the film in a very different way, which I think is no bad thing.
That's absolutely true. So,
Mm.
Conrad, I'm going to let you go first and tell people what it was like to watch The Princess Bride with me.
Just just a sheer delight. It was a magical experience.
I'm sorry in advance.
So, The Princess Bride, just to give you an intro, in case anybody needed an introduction to this movie, it's directed by a man called Rob Reiner, who is still with us. He is primarily known for This Is Spinal Tap, one of his first films, Stand By Me, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men, and The American President. So he's done it all, sort of political dramas, courtroom thrillers, a horror movie, psychological thriller, maybe you could say, a classic rom com, and a coming of age drama, and a breakthrough comedy, cult comedy that everybody loves. Most recently, he did a podcast on Who Killed JFK that's quite entertaining if you want to
Hmm,
listen to that. Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So it's his work, and the writer of the film was William Goldman, the late William Goldman, who, as well as being a novelist, was also a screenwriter. He was the Oscar winner for original screenplay for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 1969, and he won Best Adapted Screenplay for All the President's Men in 76, and he also adapted Misery from the Stephen King book for Rob Reiner. So
Wow.
quite the pedigree behind this. It was shot in various locations around England and one location in Ireland for the Cliffs of Insanity, as well as a lot of Shepperton studios. It's very setty in
It is very
places.
setty. Mhm.
Mm,
Didn't
it was,
realize it. You pointed that out while we were watching it, and I was like, "Oh my god, you're right."
yeah, it does look like a school play occasionally. It was released on the 25th of September 1987, and it charted 16th that week. But the odd
Oh.
thing about it was that it kind of grew by word of mouth. It was
Hmm,
in the chart for like 11 weeks, and it sort
not
of
bad.
leapt up to third place, drifted down, left back up again. It was steadily climbing again up towards Christmas, still in the chart when the distributor pulled it. So it garnered a 30.9 million box office on a $16 million budget, which is a modest, slow burn success, largely because the studio did not know what to market it as. Is it a comedy? Is it a spoof? Is it an adventure movie? Is it a romance? Well, as we know from Peter Falk's introduction, it's all of these things, really. And so it was a tough sell in a high concept 80s movie market.
Mhm.
But since then, it has grown in stature, particularly on VHS and cable TV viewings, and it frequently features in top 10 rankings of best 80s movies, or number one in the case of Rotten Tomatoes' 35 best 1980s fantasy movies, with a 96% fresh rating. So it really has become one of those films that everybody loves in retrospect all of a sudden, like The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah,
Um,
there are several movies like that. It's really weird.
it is, yeah. But oddly enough, that's not the way you feel about it, Melinda. And
It's not.
we we got to experience that when we watched the movie together. Would you like to see?
I would. Yeah, and I hope that everyone doesn't lambast me after the Yeah, so we basically filmed ourselves watching this, and we've edited the choice parts together. Now, please keep in mind, we couldn't really show much of the actual, or definitely play the sound for a lot of these. Otherwise, we would be copyright stricken immediately. So we've done some
Yeah,
creative editing, um, but I think I haven't seen this, so I'm eager to see what Conrad has put together.
yeah. Some choice quotes are still there, but I think if you know the movie, you'll know what Melinda
It's
is
the most
reacting
quotable
to.
movie in the universe. Sad to
Yes,
say, but yes, it is.
easily. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Melinda's reaction to The Princess Bride.
Okay, here we go. I've got my most romantic hoodie on.
And I have blackness on. Let's go.
Yeah, okay, let's do it.
Ooh, look at that old Cheetos bag.
It was the book my father used to read to me when I was sick, and I used to read it to your father.
Like a disease.
Revenge, giants, monsters.
Annoying people. Those Cheetos are gonna get stale.
Our favorite pastimes were riding a horse and tormenting the farm boy that worked there.
See, she's already an asshole.
Nothing gave Buttercup as much pleasure as ordering Wesley around.
See?
Farm boy, polish my horse's saddle.
Why does he like her? Is it just because she's hot?
He can tell that his beauty will redeem her.
Gross. She's just the quintessential pretty girl who gets people to do what she wants because of her looks. So I don't like her.
Hold it, hold it. What is this?
Yeah, what is this?
When's it get good?
That's what I keep asking. Look at his nose. It's just so perfect.
It's perfect. Yeah, it's the nose you take with you to the plastic surgeon when you go, yeah, this.
Yeah.
He's just perfection.
Yeah, until he starts acting smug, and then I'm going to hate him. It's not
You
very
see-
long from now.
You see, I like the smug. I
I
could
hate
put up
smug.
with the smug for that nose.
No.
Synthesized trumpets aren't real.
Well done.
A month from now,
I'm not Harry Hamlin, but I could be.
would you like to meet her?
No!
Buttercup!
She's got the dumbest name in the history of names. How did she get elevated from a farm to here? Do they explain it?
No, he just says that he's marrying a commoner like yourselves. This is the thing I don't understand about the caste system. How does she have a farm boy that she's ordering around? She's common as Mark.
She's a farm boy.
Yeah. So she's basically just a dick.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I thought, see,
Just-
my reading of it was that she was just a teenager, so she was a bit of a spoiled cow.
I know, but that doesn't make it better. Like, I don't like a spoiled teenager. I like a tortured teenager.
You've a great gift for rhyme.
Yes, yes. Some of the time.
I like these two.
Yeah. Overall, they're my favorite characters in the movie.
It's inconceivable.
He looks like an accountant who's on a trip to the Ren Fest.
She doesn't get eaten by the eels at this time.
At
The
this
eel
time.
doesn't get her.
See, all of this stuff is cute.
It's great. I love when you cut to Fred and he's like clutching his duvet
Yeah.
as tight as possible.
Yeah. Is that Grizzlor behind him? It is.
Inconceivable.
Yay!
Oh God, here we go with the inconceivable.
You gotta love the inconceivable.
I don't. I hate it.
He didn't fall? Inconceivable.
Yay!
Shut up.
People in masks cannot be trusted.
I mean, as a wrestler, he would know.
I could give you my word as a Spaniard.
No good. I've known too many Spaniards.
Racist.
I love my father, so naturally I challenge his murderer to a duel.
See, I feel like this guy has the interesting story in the movie. I just kind of want to see a movie about him. I would probably really like this movie if you take out all the quotable stuff in Billy Crystal.
Here we go. One of the best examples of fencing in film history, apparently.
Is it better than Zorro, the original Zorro movies?
Possibly not, but I mean, it was the guy that taught Darth Vader how to do lightsabers.
Yeah.
I'm not left-handed either.
See, I don't mind the smugness in these scenes with the two of them. I find that the two of them are fun to watch together overall. Although this plays like a Looney Tunes thing because of the pacing and the music and
Well, that's Mark Knopfler's fault.
it's not the actor's fault.
The two of them practiced this
Sure.
throughout filming.
It is impressive.
Inconceivable!
You! See, I feel like we don't know anything about Wesley or Buttercup. And so it makes it hard for me to give a crap about them. So what happens for me is I care more about Andre and Inigo Montoya.
No, it's true. The romance really has to be taken on faith because there isn't much characterization there.
I don't know anything about her. Her character is just a blank slate to me, other than she loves to torment people.
How did it end?
The guy on the horse there, something about like all of this is starting to feel very Monty Python to me.
Well, he's from Spinal Tap, isn't he?
I think so.
If you wish her dead, by all means, keep moving forward.
Yeah, I do.
Let me explain.
How does she not recognize his voice also, if he's like her great love?
I mean, I'd recognize the nose, the lips, the mole on the beauty mark
Same.
on the
Same.
jawline.
I know it's a conceit of the film. It's just,
Mm.
God, it's the overacting, mugging. Ugh. That's gotta be hard on your balls.
Yeah, maybe he's a eunuch.
The next time my hand flies on its own, for where I come from, there are penalties when a woman lies.
So romantic.
I feel like those boots should have a penalty. They're just horrible. I mean, unless you're Wonder Woman, you shouldn't be wearing those.
Who was this love of yours? Another prince like this one? Ugly, rich, and scabby?
Why is he tricking her?
He's annoyed at her because she's engaged.
Did she have a choice? Because she's a woman in this time period, so...
He's assuming that she did.
Well, you know what happens when you make an assumption.
Life is pain, Highness. Anyone who says differently is selling something.
Yes. One of my favorite quotes.
That is a good line. He's had a couple. Oh my god, I feel like I'm watching an airplane movie.
Well, it doesn't help that's clearly a man in a wig. Is it just the Britishness that makes it seem immediately Python-esque?
No, I think it's the slapsticky, over-the-topness of it. Hey, it's like Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, I'm not saying I'd like to build a summer home here, but the trees are actually quite lovely.
I agree with him. It's okay, you're wearing polyester. It's pretty fire-resistant. If they were gonna give him a ponytail, couldn't they have just given him, like, a big ponytail, like a long one?
Or a man bun?
I mean, anything would be better than that little rat tail. Wow, really? I hate sand. She's such a damsel in distress.
She's not the most active of female characters.
Or developed.
I'll never succeed. We may as well die here.
And immediately gives up. She's like, let's just die.
Now he's got a shoulder exposed.
I think that's out this year. I think one of my big problems about this is that the romance just really falls flat, and I need that to get through all the other stuff that I hate here. Oh god. Oh god.
It's Mel Smith.
I don't know who that is, but...
British comedian, one half of Smith and Jones. And Wesley is shirtless.
The pit of despair. Ah! Don't even think about trying to escape.
Ugh, more terrible fabric.
True love saved her in the fire swamp, and she treated it like garbage. And that's what she is, the queen of refuse. Boo! Boo!
I feel like the guy who wrote this got broken up with. Has some anger issues he's working through. Why does he have weird things on his nipples? That's what I don't...
Oh, yeah, I don't know, but it's great.
I could live without it.
This being our first try, I'll use the lowest setting.
Oh, so it's like a single ascending dose clinical trial.
Right, okay.
This is for posterity, so be honest.
I just love how politely evil he is.
I do prefer that to this guy and his slapstickiness.
It won't be easy.
Try ruling the world sometime.
He told Inigo of Pizzini's death and the existence of Count Rugen, the six-fingered man.
How does he know that, though?
I know.
He's been reading the book? I don't know.
I guess he read the script.
The Men in Black?
His true love is marrying another tonight.
Again, how do they know that Buttercup
don't
is
know.
the man in black's? Yeah, there's a scene missing from this, surely.
Otherwise, it's a very sloppy script.
This is a nice shot.
Again, this guy and Andre are the best parts of the movie.
That's a good argument for that.
I mean, I agree Carrie Elwes is attractive, but in terms of story, I find it comes up short. That was a lovely shot, though.
You mean he wins? Jesus, Grandpa, what did you read me this thing for?
Jesus, Grandpa.
If Carrie Elwes is still warm, I'd just say just have a bit of fun.
Yikes.
What?
Oh my god.
Oh, they dressed him.
There's usually only one thing that you can do. Go through his clothes and look for loose change.
Would you consider this to be like an offensive Jewish stereotype?
Probably.
Mutton, lettuce, and tomato sandwich when the mutton is nice and lean and the tomatoes are ripe. They're so perky. Have fun storming the castle.
Oh, shut up. I hate the overly quoted bullshit.
Break up the wedding, steal the princess.
Steal the princess. Not rescue. Steal her. Like a thing.
What I wouldn't give for a Holocaust cloak.
A what? I feel like I'm watching Scooby-Doo now.
Oh, it's your favorite.
Oh, God.
Knowledge.
Ugh. The type of comedy that this is like my least favorite thing in the world. Like, I don't find any of it funny.
I'm killing myself once we reach the honeymoon suite.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Now that was funny. This whole part is very Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah.
And that's what I like. The vengeance part is interesting to me.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
If it weren't for the constant repeating of that, like, this would be like a really lovely scene in this movie.
I think he has to do it to make the last bit work, though.
Yeah.
Anything you want.
I want my father back, you son of a bitch.
Yeah. That was a good line.
That always gets me. Mandy is great.
Yeah. His shoulder healed nicely. Can you imagine what those horses are thinking right now? Please, God, don't let me be his horse.
You did something right.
See, that's one thing I don't understand. Was that his character arc? Because when was it set up that Physic makes mistakes and struggles with thinking things through? He seems like the wisest and most sensible person throughout.
He does. The closest you'd come is like the commentary by the accountant guy at the beginning, where he was saying how incompetent he was, and that's why he needed him to survive, remember, on the boat. It's never really otherwise established.
No, it's not borne out in his behavior, though.
No.
Since the invention of the kiss, there have been 5 kisses that were rated the most passionate. This one left them all behind.
Or so the script tells us. Close that Cheeto bag. They're going to get stale. I survived it. It turned my hair white, everyone. Yeah.
Yes.
So
there we go. That was your on-the-spot reaction. So, Melinda, why did you hate it? And when did you first see it? What's your experience of it?
I saw it when it came out. I must have seen it in the theater. I don't specifically remember that, but I do know that, like, when I told my mom I was going to be doing this show, she was like, "Oh God, I know you hate that movie. I remember the rants." So apparently I've been ranting about this movie since the 80s.
Wow.
And she said, like, that she remembered my dad actually liked it and that I hated it. And she was like, she said, I just kind of could go either way with it. It was just sort of meh. But she said, you hated that movie from the beginning. It made you so mad. And I do remember feeling mad. And I think that I got more mad because everybody else started quoting it.
Mm.
It's the constant quoting, like, and it's the most annoying quoting that you've ever heard. Like, there are lots of things that get quoted. Like, even Lord of the Rings gets quoted. Like, stuff gets quoted. But this movie, there's something about the quoting that's just, it's skin-peelingly bad to me. So, and I mean, I do think that, like, why I hate it is, it's not really a fairy tale. People say it's a fairy tale, but it doesn't feel like one. So, because fairy tales are like short stories that are kind of in the folklore genre, and they typically have like magic and enchantments and fanciful creatures and stuff like that. So this doesn't have any of that, and that's because in the book, it was the book that the guy is reading to the kid is a history book, not a fairy tale. So these are all things that have to be able to happen in the real world. There aren't like unicorns and dragons and stuff. So I know that not all fairy tales have that, but it's just sort of like one of those things. So I personally think that the author, and particularly in the screenplay, he is commenting more on the fairy tale ending concept more than fairy tales, as we previously discussed in the fairy tale theater episode we did. And he is apparently noted to hate fairy tale endings. Like they lived happily ever after, that thing. So I feel like this whole movie is kind of spoofing in the same way that Spinal Tap is spoofing metal bands. He's spoofing fairy tales. And I don't love spoof movies. There's not one spoof movie that I like in the world. So
Right, okay.
that's like a type of comedy that I just don't like.
Yeah.
It's also not a great romance because, like we talked about, Buttercup and Wesley's relationship it's really hollow and kind of unmotivated. And it kind of just feels more like a swashbuckling adventure story like Pirates of the Caribbean more than a fairy tale. And I feel like the point of the movie is like the action adventure and then the comedy. And, you know, so I guess if you like those things and you like that style of comedy, then which clearly a lot of people do, then it's going to be great for you. I just feel like it's a movie with all the window dressing of a fairy tale, but none of the substance. So it's like ordering a big ice cream sundae banana split and then getting something that's just the toppings and the ice cream is missing. Like that. So it's ultimately unsatisfying, right? Like it's still sweet, but it's not satisfying. So anyway, that's my take on it.
Yeah. No, it's a really well-reasoned take, and it wasn't until you started talking about it that I realized that the romance really isn't there. It has to be taken on faith. And there's a reason for it in terms of the plot mechanics, because if you spent a long time with Wesley and Buttercup at the beginning, then his identity surprise as being the Dread Pirate Roberts halfway through, the Man in Black, wouldn't work because you would be so familiar with him that the idea that that could be a surprise at that point would just be gone. There's no way. I mean, let's face it, everybody knew that it was him straight up. Was anybody surprised?
That's what I couldn't figure out while we were watching it. Like, was it supposed to be a mystery to the audience, or just like in the book? Apparently, Buttercup is really dim, and they changed that in the movie for understandable reasons. And I just want to take a moment to say, like, a lot of people like may think that I don't like it because Buttercup is a rescued character. She's sort of not a strong female character, and honestly. And also that it's just sort of a sausage fest of a movie. Like there aren't very many female characters of note.
No,
but
true.
I don't think that's why, because like my favorite movie is Lord of the Rings. So that clearly is not a problem for me. Like as long as the character is well written, I don't really care what the gender is personally. Like if it's a compelling story, I like it. I just don't find this story to be compelling. Buttercup sucks, but even if she did suck, like if there was something else going on that I could connect with, then I would be fine with that. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does, because I mean, without that being there, then the rest of it just falls flat for you, apart from the revenge story, which really does hit. I mean, emotionally, it really hits when he finally manages to kill Count Rugen, because you love Inigo, rather.
I do. I do like him, and the scene that you talk about at the end where he's like, I want my father back, is a very compelling moment in the film. I just wish that it's sort of like one of those things where there are parts of the movie that I enjoy, but they're few and far between. So the whole cohesive thing does not work. And I'm sure that there are lots of instances of that people have had, like where you may like, Zantara may like a part of Batman 89, but just not the whole thing put together, right? Like, or it's not that you hate every single part of a film. It's just that yeah.
And it was the same for me with E.T. It's not like something that you think is completely toxic,
right?
Yeah. So I'll give you a little bit more detail on The Princess Bride. So around 1970, William Goldman, the writer, asked his daughters, Jenny, 7, and Susanna, 4, what they would want a story to be about if he wrote one for them. He always used to tell them bedtime stories, but he was going to write one for them. And one of his daughters said princesses and the other one said brides. So he wrote The Princess Bride. It's the only novel of Goldman's that he liked personally, that he was really proud of. He got writer's block trying to string all the scenes together that he had in his head for specific adventure beats. And then he had this idea of writing it as though it were the abridgment of a longer book by a fictional author called S. Morgenstern. So that's what he ended up doing. So it's The Princess Bride, just the good bits, as far as
Right.
he's concerned. He'd gotten to know Carl Reiner while he was writing a book about Broadway, which featured one of Carl Reiner's plays, and he sent him a copy of The Princess Bride when it was published, and Carl gave it to his son, Rob, and it became Rob's favourite book. And he always dreamed of making an adaptation of it as a film, but he could never get the money for it or the backing for it until his commercial success, Stand By Me, in 1986. And then he was finally able to scrape the money together to get it off the ground. In terms of themes in the movie, well, fencing, fighting, torture, revenge, giants, monsters, chases, escapes, true love, miracles. It's meant to be a fairy tale. As you've pointed out, it's kind of not. It's kind of got the set dressing of one and it's spoofing them. But it does have the same sort of limitations in terms of its simplistic portrayal of characters, and it sort of reduces them to parables. And
Right.
so I think one of the major themes of it is true love, but when you look at it, it's just revered as a rare and powerful thing by all of the characters. All of them, even the villains, recognize it as this immutable, inevitable force of nature that kind of surpasses the individual characters that happen to be sort of ensnared in it. They seem to be sort of a side issue. True love in itself is just this amazing, rare thing.
True love, whatever that is, because they don't ever really define.
No. It's something that you aspire to, and that if you happen to get, it's just, it can do anything, which is lucky. It's lucky that they don't have to have any kind of motivation for it. It just seems to be this thing that's fated for the two of them, because there is no development, as I said, of them as a couple whatsoever. You learn nothing about them.
Is it something that you can attain, though, like through hard work or questing, or is it just something that happens to you passively? That's the thing that becomes a problem for me, because if it's just something that happens to you randomly, it's like winning the lottery.
Yeah, it really is. They just look at each other, bam, it's there. So,
yeah.
And I think it's because they're hot. I think that's basically how it happens. It also talks about, in the way that fairy tales often do, it has sort of teaching lessons in there as well. And one of those is that arrogance is a fatal flaw. So the downfall of all three of the villains in the film and in the book, Vizzini, Count Rugen, and Prince Humperdinck, they have complete confidence in their superiority over others, and they're also cowards who like to cheat to win. Vizzini by swapping the cups behind Wesley's back, and it kills him. Rugen by running away and throwing a knife rather than dueling Inigo fairly, and Humperdinck by hiring other people to do all of his dirty work and lying about it, and it doesn't work for any of them. Whereas the flip side to that, it puts a great deal of stock into being dedicated to something, to either to people, to the mastery of something like fencing in Inigo's case, and also revenge. Wesley overcoming poisoning by building up an immunity to iocane powder. And his true love enables him to survive years of servitude under the dread pirate Roberts, and then eventually even beat death. So there is this sense that putting in work and mastering something and working hard at it, and also being true to people and loyal to people, will allow you to overcome everything. So I think those are the sort of messages that the story has.
I can go along with that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So some fun facts about the film, just to finish off. they were really the studios were really keen on this one, so it was greenlit almost as soon as it was published in 1973. And Richard Lester, the director of The Three Musketeers and later Superman 2 and 3, which gives you some idea of what the comedy would have ended up being like, he was attached
Really
to
good.
direct. Yeah, would have been great. Just remember the opening titles of Superman 3. If you thought slapsticky was what you got this time.
I know.
Whoa.
No, you're not
Yeah.
wrong. Although weirdly, I like Superman 3.
I do too.
But I like it as a bad movie,
Yeah.
you know.
I like the cyborg. But yeah, so he was attached to direct, but then it fell through because all the executives at the studio changed hands. And when the new executives come in, anything that was greenlit by the previous administration immediately is the worst idea on earth and gets cancelled.
Of course.
Stupid.
Yes.
So yes, they had to wait until Rob Reiner came along for it to actually turn into a Go project again. Andre the Giant, who you might know more about than me, Goldman was a lunatic fan of Andre. So even though Schwarzenegger was in the running to play Inigo in 1987,
No, I can't see that.
No, I don't think it would have worked. He was too big a star by the time they got to filming it anyway.
Yes.
He was 7'5" tall and weighed 550 pounds, supposedly.
Well, yeah,
when
so
they made the movie.
He's a wrestler, as everyone knows, and you know, even from if you ask wrestling people, wrestling stats are very hard to verify. They love to like enhance things because it's just the nature of, you know, the way that they talk about themselves. So he was at least 7 feet tall. He may have been 7'3", but he was extremely big, and he weighed probably 500 pounds. He did. So one thing that's interesting to note that I had looked up again, because I love wrestling stuff, weirdly, but I like the scene where Buttercup jumps out of the window and he catches her. He was in so much agony because he had gigantism. Like, it's like this thing, like a medical condition that he refused to treat because he wanted to stay as big as possible and not have it impact his wrestling career. So he knew he was going to not live a very long time. So he was in a tremendous amount of pain from all the wrestling injuries as well as his illness. So his back was killing him. So he could not lift Robin Wright Penn, whatever. So they had her on strings holding her up in that scene when he's holding her. So even though he's huge. So like not long after this was filmed in late 86, he got surgery. And anyone who's into wrestling probably knows that like the next year he did the huge WrestleMania 3, I think it is, with Hulk Hogan, where Hulk Hogan actually body slams him, and it was called the Slam Heard Around the World. It is horrendous to watch because you know like how much pain he was in during the filming of this movie. And then he had surgery, and then he, like a few months later, was in the ring with Hulk Hogan, and he throws him on his back. It is just, oh my God. Like I watched it again this morning. It's terrifying, but yes.
Okay.
Love Andre. He's an amazing person.
Yeah. No, it's a real shame because he passed away at the age of 46, which
like only 6 years after this movie was 6 years, 93. So
yeah, and he's so great in the movie. He was quite a problem in terms of logistics on the movie. As you said, he needed a lot of assistance. One thing that they had trouble with was getting him to all of the remote locations that they were filming on. So if they needed to get to the top of a ravine or whatever for the picturesque view to wrestle with Carrie Elwes, he didn't fit in the van
right
that they had for moving the cast and crew around. So they actually got him his own all-terrain vehicle that he could drive himself. And Carrie Elwes wanted to have a go at it. And he managed to break his big toe by getting it wedged between the pedals and the wheel or something.
God.
And it was right before the scene where he says, "Life is pain, Highness," rather ironically. So if you look in the movie, when he's sort of hobbling over to that rock and then sitting
Oh,
down to
right.
deliver that line, it's because his big toe has just been broken and they've just splintered it together and
Oh,
cut a hole in
no.
his boot so that they can jam his foot into it.
Oh
He's in a
my
lot of
God.
pain. Poor
Wow.
Cary Elwes.
Amazing.
Yeah. Strangers quote Inigo's famous mantra to Mandy Patinkin, the actor, almost every day of his life
I'm
if he
sure
goes
that's true.
outside. But according to an interview he gave to New York Magazine on the film's 25th anniversary, he loves it. He says that he can't believe that he got to be in The Wizard of Oz, as far as he's concerned. And studio head studio head Barry Diller told Reiner when he was making it to make it like The Wizard of Oz. So although it might not find its audience immediately, it would become an evergreen classic over time. And he turned out to be right, because it did become a hit on VHS and cable TV and become quotable. And the cast...
Boy, howdy.
Yeah. And you love it.
I
and
love
the cast, the cast
get
have
enough.
frequently called back for reunions, like this wonderful shot that they did together for Entertainment Weekly in 2011. And I love that there's a little portrait of Andre in the
Yeah.
corner.
Who
of
is
it.
that next to Carol Kane? Is
That
Billy
is
Crystal?
Billy Crystal. Yeah,
God, it
your
doesn't look like him.
favorite.
Wow, my favorite.
Yeah.
I do love Carol Kane, so there's that.
I love Carol Kane. I love her in Scrooged as well.
Oh my God, I loved her in Scrooged. So great. Well, that was something.
Yes, The Princess Bride.
The Princess Bride. You know, The Princess Bride is one of those things that, you know, if you ever say you don't like it, you feel like people are going to burn you at the stake.
Yeah, I get that with the next film that we're going to talk about.
Do you? Because it's a weird feeling, like, because you never know whether you should just like confess that you don't like it, or you just kind of go like, and just sort of like nod along and smile, because like, I know if I say I don't like it, the first word out of someone's mouth is going to be inconceivable, and I'm going to want to punch them in the face.
Yeah, that's not wise.
No, but I want to. But anyway, so yeah, I think we're gonna move on now to your movie that doesn't resonate with you, but everybody else seems to love. Although the chat today sort of seems like maybe that's not true. There's a lot of people who at least understand why you wouldn't like E.T. E.T. the Extraterrestrial from 1982, the famous classic film that you hate.
Yes, the unassailable family film classic of a generation that defined movie making for a generation. I don't know, but...
Well, I'm just going to start this whole section off by letting you know that, and Michael asked me specifically to tell you this, that he's completely got your back in the chat.
Okay, that's
he
good.
completely agrees with you on all points about this film. He has seen the reel that I put together of you watching the film and essentially cheered all the way through it. So just know that you aren't completely alone in your feelings.
Okay, it's good. It's good to find your people.
It is. It is good. So just a real quick, I know everybody pretty much knows about E.T., but so directed by Steven Spielberg, it came out in 1982. It was written by Melissa Matheson, who also wrote The Black Stallion. At the time that she was brought in to write this, she was Harrison Ford's girlfriend and was visiting him on the set of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And that's how that sort of all came to be. It was filmed mostly chronologically, and because that helped these very young children keep track of the tone, because it was filmed in just 61 days. It was released June 11th, 1982, and it surpassed Star Wars as the highest grossing film of all time for 11 years, beaten by Jurassic Park in 1993. And here I've got the box office comparison to Star Wars. Star Wars in the blue, E.T. in the orange. You can see, generally speaking, we're looking at original releases on the left, both domestic first and then worldwide. And then all releases, because of course both of these films have been released multiple times, both domestic and worldwide. So E.T., even to this day, still top Star Wars. If that is believable, it doesn't seem possible to me.
It's
but
amazing.
this is just the original Star Wars 1977, of course. I'm not talking about the 4 billion other Star Wars, but
yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So that's crazy to me. So it had a record 8 weekends with a gross over $10 million, a feat not matched until Home Alone in 1990, and it set the modern era record for being number 1 for 16 weeks in total. It was almost universally acclaimed by critics, regarded as one of the greatest films of all time. So, all that being said, and you hate it. So let's take a little trip with Conrad through watching E.T. through his eyes to kind of see what he thinks of it. Here we go. You already look mad.
It kind of looks like they're all hunched over having a pee, like they had to stop.
Yeah.
I could do without the little child breathing noises. Just step around the puddle.
Stop it!
Did one of those prepubescent children just try to feel up their mother's ass?
Yep.
Nice. He sounds like he's got some serious breathing issues.
It's probably all the smog and pollution.
This basically is just Poltergeist is next door, right? Happening at the same time.
What do you think of this kid's acting?
I don't know. I'm not getting much out of him so far. I always remember it being heralded as one of the great child performances, but completely stolen by Drew Barrymore. A strange guy in the woods.
That's what you want as a small boy.
Oh yeah, every time.
What is Mom wearing?
The perpetual question. What was she wearing in the last scene?
Maybe it was a pervert or deformed kid or something.
A deformed kid.
Drew Barrymore rules.
Come on.
It was nothing like that, penis breath. Hell yeah.
Yay! Penis breath. I never understood why kids in 80s movies were always slobs. My bedroom was immaculate.
I'm not surprised by that comment.
And now the touching begins. Sorry.
No, you're not.
He shits Reese's Pieces.
So this is where they come from. Do you remember in the 80s when your parents would just leave you home alone all day when you were sick?
Never happened.
Oh, I did. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
You realize your parents messed you up based on how other people react to stories about your childhood?
Just don't turn a light on, because we'll see how bad the effects are. Kind of looks like Danny DeVito in a bathrobe. E.T.'s thinking, oh, for f***'s sake. Perhaps Death in the Woods would have been better.
Is that an X-Wing he has hanging from his ceiling? Or is it like...
Yeah, he's got a TIE fighter as well.
He won't do trick-or-treating.
You don't know that?
Yeah.
Day 2, he sucks out brains.
Yeah.
It is the Poltergeist town. There should be a cemetery up there.
This is them doing the shot location testing for Poltergeist.
Yeah. Does he shit? Do they ever deal with that?
Has to. He has to. I don't think they do, but I'm imagining pellets.
I don't like his feet.
Drew is winning me over. So he has telekinetic powers? So he can bring plants back to life, and he has telekinetic powers and ESP.
Yes.
Where's he from? Uranus? Get it? Your anus?
Surely she's going to know she never bought a brown wrinkly thing for her kids.
They're dissecting.
Oh, dissecting frogs. Yeah, it's like a rite of
Yes.
passage for American school children. It's really weird. Oh, God, it just looks really awful.
You mean the special effects?
He's just gross.
The character design?
Yeah. He's really off-putting. He's all pulsating. Okay, that's actually pretty good.
Again, remember when your parents would leave you home alone when you were 6 or 5?
No.
Oh, my parents definitely did.
Stories you thought were fine, because when you're a kid, you're stupid.
Oh my God, he's talking.
It's the worst thing that could happen. He's going to want the vote next. It's all so magical and lovely.
Yeah, I can see why you'd hate it.
Okay, so you can heal plants and people, and telekinesis, and psychic.
That is final. You are not going as a terrorist. All the guys are.
As a terrorist?
Oh my god.
Hooray, it's the 80s!
I don't feel anything though. It's kind of, what can't he do? And in which case, why does he need some children to help him?
That is a problem.
Why does he have to send a signal as well? They know he's there. It's weird because I'm a real soft touch for Boy and His insert animal movies.
You are.
Like, How to Train Your Dragon has me weeping. The War Horse has me weeping. What is it about E.T. that I just feel as though I'm being tricked and it's a turd? It's a pulsating turd and I'm being tricked.
Now that is ridiculous. They're not the good guys. No one just starts descending on a house like that.
It's ridiculous. It's just dumb. Perhaps they could beat a puppy to death while they're at it. Yeah, I think it was semi-nude squeaking that I didn't enjoy either. See, I don't understand why any of this is necessary.
You mean resuscitating E.T.?
No, dramatically, why do we have to kill the cute, well, supposedly cute creature at the crisis point of the movie, only for him to just magically come back again, with no explanation? I think that's what pisses me off. It's emotional manipulation for no thematic or narrative reason at all.
It really upset me as a kid, like all this.
See, it didn't me. I didn't. Maybe I'm a sociopath. I just looked at it and just thought, fuck off. Fuck right off.
I can't feel anything anymore.
He's a sociopath.
I love you.
Gotta have bikes. It's an 80s kids movie.
Spaceship to the moon.
Shut up, Gertie.
Gertie just sucks. Space, Jesus. Yeah, this is the bit that they changed because they have guns, so in the special edition they removed them all and turned them into radios. Why are they anamorphically stretched in that shot? I've never understood that. And now the 3-hour goodbye scene.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And you can bat your eyelids all you like, you really look grim.
I wonder how much of your hatred is the character design and how much is just the emotional manipulation.
It's about 30-70, I'd say.
30 being the character design?
Yeah, I think so. It's the emotional manipulation because there's no need for this.
I just wanted to say goodbye.
I feel like I'm torturing you right now.
It's not you, it's Spielberg and Williams with the strings. Let's make children cry. And then he came back for a broadband advert, didn't he?
I'll be right here.
But, you know, don't rush up the ramp or anything. God, he supports the LGBTQ community.
The end.
Thank God. I hate it. Yeah, I still hate it. Oh boy, well done. That was very well done.
That was a lot of fun to make.
Yeah, I love that you managed to slip in our favorite stand-up comedian as well.
Well, I kept thinking, like, initially I was going to play the clip from Home Alone where he's in the grocery store and he's like, I'm 8 years old. Would I really be here by myself? But then I thought, no, Taylor Tomlinson has a really funny bit about that. So I'll just put that one in there. So yeah, you really didn't like this movie. What is your history? When did you first see it, and what was your reaction at the time when you first saw it?
So I first saw it. I had an uncle in the 80s who managed to get hold of a black market VHS where obviously somebody had set up a camera in a theater and had recorded the film. So it was not the greatest quality, as you can imagine. But that's when I first saw it. And I just hated it, and I just felt completely alone because all the other kids, first of all, they thought that pulsating turd with big Disney eyes was cute. When I found him repulsive, just foul. And there are scenes like that scene where he's drunk and he's really sort of shiny and bloated and pulsating, where I just thought he's awful. And I was trying to think about it because I mentioned it in the video there while we were watching it, that I am such a soft touch for a boy and his something movie. And I was talking about this to my mum, actually. And she said, you know what it is? It's because they're animals.
Right.
And I think she's exactly right. That's what it is. It's because I can't get the past the thing. Like I said, when watching it just then, Danny DeVito in a bathrobe. It's an old wrinkly man that loves pot plants that's shambling around naked in these kids' home. And it's not an animal. It's not a cute friend or a pet, or it's a sentient, intelligent life form that's traveled across space. So I think that's why I feel no sympathy for him. And so there's that. And then as an adult, when I look back on it, I think really it was the emotional manipulation that I just despised. It's so syrupy, and none of it is, or it doesn't seem to me that it's thematically motivated. You might know more about what the themes are supposed to be, but to me it just seems to be like an unmotivated sequence of cutesy, syrupy events where Spielberg and Williams try to hurt you as much as they possibly can, and then they roll the credits. And I got nothing out of it. I didn't learn anything. I don't think Elliot has an arc. I don't think he has a character arc. I don't think anybody learns anything through this movie about themselves. And that is not true of How to Train Your Dragon or War Horse or any of those other movies I talked about. It's just misery porn.
Yes.
With product placement for 2 hours that turned into just a sensation, and I just couldn't. I felt emotionally alienated from it and couldn't get on board.
Alienated.
Yes. And I had the same experience with Titanic, which, you know, people were going back to see over and over again and weeping over Jack's drowning, and it just left me completely cold, like an iceberg.
It left Jack cold too.
Yeah, it did. Did you see that the plank of wood that she was clinging on to sold at auction this week?
No.
$700,000, I think.
Oh my sweet Jesus.
So I think the person who bought it said that they wanted to find out whether 2 people could fit on it or not.
Wow, that's ridiculous.
That's strange. But yeah, E.T., it's mawkish, it's treacly. I didn't like the character.
Treacly.
And I despised it. And as I grew into my teens and started to get interested in behind the scenes about movies, I learned what E.T. could have been. And then I got really angry because I really wanted to see the film that Spielberg was going to make before he made this treacly pile of shite.
Which we can talk about in a minute, because I think I
Yeah.
have some slides that where we can actually show folks who may not know. A lot of you guys are very well versed, but so you may know. But yeah, so just as a backstory a little bit, this whole concept of ET, according to Steven Spielberg, certainly when he first created it, was that this was based on an imaginary friend that Steven had created after his parents got divorced. And the friend, he says, was sort of like the brother he never had, because I think he has a couple sisters, and then the father he felt like he had just lost. And he says that the relationship between Michael and Elliot, so that's the older brother and Elliot, mirrors Steven Spielberg's relationship with his younger sisters during the parents' divorce. So you see the brother going from being, even during the course of the movie, from being more teasing to being more like on Elliot's side and helping him do all of these things. But during filming Raiders in Tunisia, I don't know, Michael was filling me in even more on this. So Steven Spielberg was very cut off from everyone during filming in Raiders. So he wasn't drinking the water. He wasn't eating the food because he was terrified he was going to get sick. So he's kind of like a germaphobe. And so he was very isolated. And so because of that isolation, he was feeling very lonely and maudlin and, all of this. And so that dredged up all of these emotions of back when he felt that way before, when his parents got divorced. So he started thinking about that. And, the next project he was planning to work on, to your point, Conrad, was this sort of more edgy horror type film about aliens. But while he's in Tunisia, he starts thinking he wants to do something a little bit different, and he reaches out to Melissa Matheson. Like I said, that's Harrison Ford's girlfriend at the time. She's a writer, and she had written Black Stallion, I think, by that point. And he told her about this unproduced idea called Night Skies, which is this, I think, the thing you're talking about. And it's about this alien, but they took it in a different direction. And so she wrote E.T. and Me, which was the original screenplay name, in about 8 weeks. Then he took that treatment rather than the other idea that he had previously had to Columbia Pictures to try to sell it to them, but they passed on it. They were like, nah, this is too weird. Like, no one's going to like this. The creature's ugly, or like it sounds like it's going to scare kids. So he went to MCA/Universal, and Universal picked it up. And so that's who made the movie. So just really quickly, and I'll come back to the Dark Skies thing, but you talked about some of the themes. So Elliot and E.T. are linked, and it's never really completely clear why, but E.T. is like the first and last letters of Elliot's name. Like he's sort of, it's kind of intent. And Elliot is alienated by the loss of his father, and E.T. helps Elliot come out of his head because he's supposed to come across as this very cerebral, mature boy who gets more in touch with his emotions through the course of the movie and learns to express emotion. That's what his arc is supposed to be. To be able to say I love you, because he's sort of more shut down because his father has left. That's what it's supposed to convey. I don't think it's terribly successful at that, but I think that is the intention. A lot of people say that they think that there is a Jesus parallel. You sort of made a joke about this during the filming where you said space Jesus. Andrew Nigels, who was a film critic, described E.T.'s story as, quote, crucifixion by military science and, quote, resurrection by love and faith. And then people cite the comparison of the poster to the creation of Adam. So
yeah,
I feel like that. I mean, it may be inspired by that, but I don't know that the themes are intentional. Spielberg himself scoffs at that idea because he's like, can you imagine me going to my extremely Jewish mother and telling her that I wrote a Christ-like, character arc in a film, like,
Yeah.
I kind of probably agree. Like I believe Spielberg on that one anyway. People also say that it's a modern fairy tale. We're back to fairy tales again. So it's people say it's like a retelling of Peter Pan from the perspective of a lost boy. E.T. being unable to live on Earth, like Peter Pan being unable to live in Neverland, and instead of pirates, it's the scientists who are, whatever. But I think that's kind of thin, Riggs. Like, I think it's a thin analogy. And then the other one that people talk about is Kathleen Kennedy, of course, was very involved in this. Our favorite Kathy Kennedy. She talks about the important theme being being about tolerance. And then Steven Spielberg in more recent years has said that it does focus on overcoming differences and accepting people who are not like you. I kind of feel like it's probably more the original thing that Spielberg said, which was about his parents' divorce, and he wanted to tell a story about himself. And he does say that this is the first film he made that was for himself. And it's about himself. And as we know, Spielberg continues to be fairly self-obsessed with a lot of the films he makes. It's like his projection of his family and even his latest film, The Fabelmans thing, like is all about him. So it's a thing with Spielberg. And so I also wanted to really quickly touch on Poltergeist, because you noted a lot of similarities. You've got the same kind of dog, same kind of neighborhood, little cute blonde girl. Like there's all kinds of parallels, and it's because they both came out like a week apart in 1982, which is insane. Columbia really wanted a sequel to Close Encounters, and Steven Spielberg initially wanted to do the sequel, the dark sequel that we talked about earlier, which was initially called Watch the Skies. It was later called Night Skies. And he had actually already talked to Rick Baker about creating this alien, because he wanted it to be about a family who was being threatened by a malevolent alien or group of aliens. And so this is what Rick Baker had put together and had already made for that treatment. So it's kind of a shame, because it does look like it might have been really interesting looking as a film, to your point.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you see, I've got that enormous 2-volume set. My brother bought it me for Christmas, all about Rick Baker's entire career, with all of these behind the scenes photos
you sent me this one.
Yeah, that was where he was doing a comparison between his design for the Night Skies alien and E.T. if you just lop the top of the head off and change it. And he thinks that maybe Carlo Rambaldi's design for E.T. wasn't quite so original. But yeah, that was the thing. I really wanted to see that movie. I wanted to see Spielberg do something as terrifying as Jaws again. But of course,
how do you feel about Poltergeist?
I absolutely adore Poltergeist.
I do too. Yeah. Well, so Poltergeist is the version. It's just ghosts instead of aliens, but yeah, it's great. It's really good.
It is great. Yeah.
It's one of my favorites of his. Although I think a lot of that may be Tobe Hooper, but
I don't know. Various people have given different accounts of who directed that movie. It remains a fun little pub quiz game. Who directed Poltergeist?
I think they both did personally, but I just think that he brought an edge that, I mean, Spielberg was a lot edgier back in the early 80s. Like it was after Temple of Doom where he starts becoming too like worried about being safe. But both him and Lucas got that problem. But I think it's just unfortunate that, or maybe it is fortunate. Like maybe we got two movies and you kind of have two sides of a coin, and maybe you love E.T. or you love Poltergeist. Maybe some people love both. I don't know, but
yeah, quite possibly. I think he did something for everyone that year, which is great.
Yeah, I wonder what the movie would have been like, E.T., if the creature had looked a little more like this instead of what it looked like.
Well, yeah.
I think it would have been hard to tell him as a cute little. I think for me, it's the noises he makes that make him seem helpless.
Yeah, there's nothing about it that's attractive. I never understood why kids found him
cute. Michael Jackson cuddling him in pictures and stuff. And it's like,
I never found him cute personally. I felt sorry for him because he seemed like I always sort of almost imagined that he was like a child version of one of those aliens and that he had been abandoned by his parents. And so I had this fear, this complete panicky fear of being abandoned by my parents, a la Punky Brewster. And so I just kind of felt a lot of empathy for being abandoned by the people who were taking care of you. And I feel like I was just able to, even though he is ugly and sort of unrelatable, I projected that onto him.
Right. Yeah. I guess that works. And I suppose the movie is about tolerance and accepting shambling, brown, wrinkly things into your home.
Yeah, it sounds like a really smart idea, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Poltergeist, of course, is a very different movie. It's very scary. It's very it's not. I watched it as a first grader. Thanks, Mom.
Wow. Okay.
I was absolutely terrified of my closet. I was obsessed with the fact that there was a giant throat creature that was living in the closet, going to suck me in.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Just really upsetting. But anyway,
did you have any clown toys?
No, absolutely
okay.
not.
That's good.
No. So let's see. The design, you kind of mentioned that the Italian special effects artist Carlo Rambaldi, who worked on the 1976 King Kong, which he won an Oscar for, 1979 Alien, and then 1982's E.T., of course. Those two won Academy Awards. He also did Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Yeah, he's a renowned special effects guy, but to your point, like, I can see what Rick Baker's saying for sure. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I do think it's a shame. I mean, especially, I was going to say, in the book, Rick Baker's book, you can see him also testing sort of the full-sized creature, and it was going to have a really weird bodily configuration that was achieved through puppetry, where the rods are attached to the body of a performer, and yeah, it was going to be a really interesting creature, I think. So I'm just bummed out that we didn't get that movie.
Yeah, it's what could have been, right? So I read, I don't know if this is true, but I did read that the face of E.T. was inspired by Carl Sandburg, Albert Einstein, and Ernest Hemingway. So I don't know if you can see the similarities there.
Yeah, didn't they say the same thing about Yoda, though?
Yeah, I don't really know if that's true. I mean, it's just like old wrinkly dude, I guess, is what you get from that. Like, I don't know. I don't see it.
No.
Let's see. The other interesting thing, speaking of the motion of him, was that he was controlled by two little people and a 12-year-old boy named Matthew Demerit, who was born without legs. So he wore the costume and then walked on his hands. So that's why
Wow.
So it's him. It's sort of like he ends up walking almost like you would when you're on complete crutches. He kind of uses his hands in that way to propel his body forward. And so this is an image of all of them with the creature. But yeah, it's impressive. And I think that Matthew's still going to conventions and signing autographs. I've seen much more recent images of him still doing. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And so he did all of the scenes where the ET is walking awkwardly or falling over, believe it or not. So like the scene with the refrigerator and the scene where I think when he's drunk and he's stumbling around in the kitchen, that's all Matthew doing that.
Wow. Okay. So he took a fridge to the face and fell over. I thought that would have just been an empty
I know,
shell.
I would too. Well, maybe he didn't that, but certainly the part during the drunken part in the kitchen where he's ambling around, that is definitely him. And he falls flat on his face, if you remember.
Yeah,
and when I watched the behind the scenes, there's a really cool behind the scenes video on YouTube. It's like, oh God, that had to hurt. Even inside that rubber costume. Like,
yeah.
The puppet is a huge part of the cost of the film. I think the film was like 11 million, 10.5 million or something. The puppet cost 1.5 million. So it's really creepy looking when you see like what's going on underneath it. Like so many other puppets just are creepy. So I'll just take you through a few fun facts. So Pat Walsh is the 67-year-old woman who voiced E.T. She smoked 2 packs a day, and she was discovered in a camera store because someone heard her voice. She has that like smoker voice.
Wow.
Yeah,
I thought
so
it was Deborah Winger for the longest time. I remember reading
it's a
somewhere that it was
rumor.
Deborah
Yeah, it's a
Winger.
rumor that goes around on the internet, but it's definitely Pat Walsh.
Ah, there you go.
M&M's, run by Mars, passed on doing ET. They thought that the ET would scare kids. So Hershey, when they were approached, immediately accepted the offer before the full offer was even made. They were like, yes, we'll do it. And the parameters of that were that Hershey did not have to pay for Reese's Pieces to be featured in the film. Then in return, Hershey would promote ET with $1 million worth of advertising, and Hershey could use ET in its ads. And that resulted in a 65% rise in their profits.
Wow. Okay. So
it was a
product
really
placement
good
works.
Yeah, this was one of the earlier forms of product placement. It wasn't as common back in the 80s as it is now. Every movie almost has it, but this is a great example of probably why every movie has it. You saw E.T. everywhere after this too, with Reese's.
Yes. Oh yeah, definitely. Now I seem to feel like back in the day, you used to just put products in your movie; they'd just be in the background, and now every single thing has to go through lawyers.
That's right, of course. We're super litigious over here.
Oh yeah.
So another fun fact is that they hired doctors from the local USC Medical Center to be in the movie to make it more convincing. Spielberg did not think that actors could, do these heavily medical testing things. So those are all real doctors doing these things. It was filmed. During post-production, there was this scene that they had filmed with Harrison Ford being in the movie. He was Elliot's principal. You couldn't see his face. This is the only view of him. But you can hear his voice. It's obviously Harrison Ford. It got cut out but it was on the '96 Laserdisc release. It's never been on any of the other subsequent releases of the film. But it is a special feature on the Laserdisc. So that's why this footage looks so grainy and crappy. But yeah, interesting. It was the film was made under the cover name A Boy's Life because Spielberg was really paranoid that someone was going to leak the project out and then everyone was going to find out about it and whatever. So it was called A Boy's Life, but that was just to hide what it was about. Also, Drew Barrymore improvised the whole "I don't like his feet" line. She completely made that up, and Spielberg encouraged them to do that a little bit. Yeah.
Well, it does make the interplay more natural between the kids. I will give them that. It doesn't feel scripted and kids reading lines wrote. It does feel a lot more alive. So that's good.
Yeah, there's a ton of footage of Spielberg directing Henry specifically during the last scene where he's crying and everything and E.T.'s leaving. And there's like a whole video of that on YouTube that you can watch. And it's really interesting to watch the directorial process because Spielberg is like really in there with him and talking to him and actually directing. So unlike George Lucas, who's just like, not
faster, more intense.
Right. Spielberg actually does the work of directing. So that's kind of nice. So Michael Jackson narrated this audiobook that was released in '82, 2 weeks before Thriller came out. That was in November. So this audiobook is pretty rare because this early release of this thing, it came out like I said, 2 weeks before Thriller. So Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones had made this agreement with the company because there's a song on there called "Someone in the Dark," which is like a new single, I guess, that they were going to do. And they didn't want it leaking out before Thriller. It was supposed to come out around Christmas time. They were supposed to hold it, but they didn't do that. And they leaked it out to radio stations. So of course, radio stations start playing this like a week before Thriller comes out. So they got sued and it went to the Supreme Court, and the court ruled that all releases and sales of the song were immediately prohibited. They ordered all current recordings and copies be instantly recalled and pulled from record shelves across the world. So anything that was sold in that very short period of time is all that's out. And it's a very big collector's item. It's hard to find. Costs, it's not that expensive. It's like $130 or so. I've found it online, but it is rare, and I didn't know that, so that was weird.
You can listen to it on YouTube, though. I think
you sure can. You can.
Oh yeah.
There was a 1982 doll. There were 2 different versions, actually. There was this pleathery one on the left.
Good
Yeah,
grief.
terrifying, isn't it? And then
Yeah.
there's a plushy one. So these were like huge sellers the Christmas of 82, if you believe that. Big
Somebody
sales.
gave that to their child on purpose.
On purpose, yeah. Some little kid snuggled up with that at night.
Oh, especially the pleathery one. Oh dear.
Well, if you think that's bad, they also came out with this. This was the E.T. Fingerlight, which is just upsetting on so many levels. It's
I bet kids had some fun with that.
I hope not. It's really bad.
Oh my.
But anyway, before we get demonetized, let me keep moving. So there's this whole other thing. The last part that I'll go through is about the plagiarism claims. So there is this director, this Indian director named Satyajit Ray. It's spelled Ray, but I think he pronounces it Rai. He's a prolific director of a lot of Indian cinema. He's he wrote, directed, scored, produced a lot of his films. He does documentary films. He kind of does it all. And he's acclaimed as being extremely influential in the industry. So even though a lot of like muggly American people may not know who he is, people who are into film definitely knew who he was, like even back in like the 60s and 70s and 80s, 60s and 70s especially. So he was friends with Arthur C. Clarke, who did, of course, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and so that inspired him to write this script called Travels with the Alien, which was then shortened to The Alien. And he had this script that was bouncing around. It was at Columbia, interestingly enough, in 1967. It had been sort of circulating for years. He was really excited. He was finally going to get to do a Hollywood film. They were actually buying into this. They were excited about the script. There's a whole story about why this didn't actually end up coming to fruition, because of the writer who was working on the treatment was kind of a dick. But anyway, the bottom line is that when E.T. came out, there was a student in some California university who immediately was like, this film completely plagiarized from the Alien script. And because a lot of people had read the script, it had been kind of, like I said, going around Hollywood. And it wasn't just that the alien was similar looking, although they kind of are described similarly. But let me just really quickly run you through the similarities. So there's an alien that crashes on Earth and befriends a young boy. He contacts the boy through dreams, so they have a psychic link in a way, and they build this bond and relationship. The alien is kind and benevolent, which is new, right? Because think about it, like in the 50s and 60s, most aliens are like the invaders. They're scary. They're the bad guys. So this was a benevolent alien that befriends a child. He's described as a cross between a gnome and a famished refugee child. This is a quote. Large head, spindly limbs, a lean torso. Is it male or female or neuter? We don't know. So that does kind of describe E.T. He has an ethereal innocence and resemblance to a sickly human child. He has a very slow-moving hand with 3 fingers. Of course, E.T. has 4 fingers, but, you know, slow-moving hand. And then he can make flowers bloom. He has healing powers, and he emits a light from his body.
Oh, yeah.
So
it sounds slightly similar.
Yeah, a lot of elements. Not everything, but there are a lot of elements that I can see why somebody would say that's really similar. So Steven Spielberg said, like, when all this started coming out, not long after E.T. came out, that he was a kid in high school at the time. This was in, again, 1967. I think Spielberg, he graduated high school in the like around that same time. And he immediately did start working in the industry, I believe. He was, when the script would have been circulating, I read that he was working on his very first project. But just because the film didn't get made in 67 doesn't mean the script isn't still rolling around, right? Anyway, so Ray never really pursued like suing or anything like that, but he was unlikely to be able to prove this. but Steven Spielberg did say he felt that he was snubbed at the Oscars because of the story. Like, I think he did. It won some stuff, but he felt like it hurt the film a little bit. But Scorsese is on record noting that E.T. was definitely influenced by the alien. So, like, this is like one of those like hotly contentious things about this movie.
Ooh, interesting.
So anyway, that is the extent of my background research on E.T. Personally, I think that sometimes movies, I think, give people the opportunity to deeply feel things that they don't generally get to feel. And so it becomes a catharsis. Like, you get to like feel those feelings in a safe environment and then walk away and feel like cleansed. But for me, this movie just touches on a lot of feelings that I feel very often and are very negative. And so it's not helpful to me. It just makes me wince, and it just is upsetting, but it has no purpose. So it's sort of like watching Marley and Me for me. Like, it's just like tragedy porn, like you said. It's just not. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I don't have an issue with sad movies. One of my all-time favorite movies is The Impossible, which is just heartbreaking to watch and incredibly painful, but it has a point.
Right.
And I think the thing that irritates me the most about E.T. is it doesn't feel to me as though it has one. So, yeah, I don't think it was robbed at the Oscars.
I'm not terribly surprised that you feel that way, but...
But I do love parts of it. I mean, I particularly enjoyed Drew Barrymore. I think she's the standout in it. But I think that's because she's the only thing that has kind of she's a bit of a chaos agent. And
she is.
I like that.
She is. She's in prime Drew Barrymore cuteness as well.
Yeah.
Like, she's, I know you didn't love Firestarter, but I did. Like, I loved Drew Barrymore from this time period in general. She's just... there's something about her that's just really appealing. So,
yeah, no, I can buy into that. So, yeah, there are things in the movie that I love. There are things in the movie that I don't. It's not a binary thing. And I really enjoyed watching it again and seeing it through your eyes. Even if it didn't change my opinion of it, it did make me appreciate some elements of it more. So,
yeah, I think, same for me with both movies, actually, watching them with someone who has a very different take on it. And I think that this is true probably more, like, E.T. is not my favorite movie. I think if E.T. were my favorite movie, that I might be a little bit more reluctant or unable to go with you on that journey.
Yeah.
But like, there was this one very notable time where we were watching the live action Beauty and the Beast, which I'm not saying it's a great movie, okay? But Beauty and the Beast is like my favorite fairy tale. So like any version of it, I kind of am like weirdly into. And so Michael was just doing what he always does and kind of ragging on it. And I got really defensive and super mad before I even realized it. I was mad. And so I think that sort of just being aware that like other people see things through a different lens, and it's not a personal attack. It is just, it's kind of interesting. So like, I loved hearing your reasoning for why you didn't like E.T. and even why you did like The Princess Bride. Like, it doesn't make me like the movie, but it makes me understand why other people do a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's all good.
It is all good.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, so that wraps up this episode of Dreamland, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find our show notes with all of our links to all of our many, many sources on retroblasting.com/Dreamland. We will be back in April with our next show, which we won't tell you what it is, but we're sure that you're going to love it. Until then, you can follow me and Conrad on Retroblasting and Movie Oubliette, respectively, on all social media outlets. And you can email us at thedreamlandpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Bye.
Bye.